My name is Jen Turtschanow with ARINGO MBA Admissions Consulting, and we help clients get into top MBA programs from across the world. And today we're going to take a deep dive into HEC Paris. All right, so I went ahead and started my application with HEC Paris. So I will be logging back in and working on my application. So as you can see here on the screen, I should be able to actually start working on my continue working on my application. Excellent. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've already done this. So let me see if I can make this just a little bit smaller so you guys can see a little bit more. So the HEC Paris application obviously is super well organized with these tabs that you can toggle between, and you don't have to complete one to go to the next. So that makes it easy to like go back and forth if you want to do one section, but you're like, oh gosh, I need, you know, my resume or my transcripts to get the other one done. So then, you know, you can go between these different tabs. So the first part is going to be a welcome page with the guidelines and all the things that you need to get started as far as submitting your application. So your CV, transcripts, GMAT or GRE are required, and then the English proficiency exam as well. So if you your instruction was not in English, then you'll need to take one of these exams to share with the committee your English proficiency. This is a little bit different. Not all schools require this, so just know that you will have to share a copy of your passport or your birth certificate during the application and a photo. So again, not all schools require this, so just know that that will be part of this actual process itself. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. And you guys, as we go through the process, please feel free to answer your questions. Erin will help me moderate as I kind of get really excited about the different parts of the application. So she'll jump in with any questions that might be relevant to what we're doing. All right, so the first thing is going to be choosing the correct program. So HEC Paris is a unique program in the fact that it offers two different starts. One of them is in January and one of them is in September. So you can decide if you want to start in the traditional fall or a January start. So HEC Paris also has a lot of different timelines that you can work on as far as application deadlines are pretty much every month. So if you did want to apply for January of 24, there's actually still time to apply. So, all right. So you will choose, for this purposes, we're going to use September and go through. If you have applied, this is that moment where you'll select, yes, I did apply before, and you'll write a brief little, like, couple sentences about why you're reapplying to the program and anything that's changed since then. All right. Sorry, I do see an application or a question about, I know I asked this before, but for the M2M program, is it okay to wait for the second deadline? Yes, it's totally fine to wait until the second deadline to make sure that, you know, like for HEC Paris, again, it has several deadlines. So if you don't make the first one, it's okay. You're not going to, it's not going to be the big difference like it is with typical MBA programs that only have 3 or 4 rounds. You're okay if you apply during round 2. Okay, so next we'll move into personal details. And as I go through this, I do know that the drop downs don't show, so I'll try to make sure that I show you everything that I can as we go through. So I did name this so that HEC Paris does not think that I'm actually submitting an application myself. But you're just going to put in your basic information and then save those contacts or save that contact information. And then you'll go into these details of your email address, your country, and again, just simple information about where you live and you're located and where they should send any paper correspondence as well. And then obviously, like if it's the same address as your permanent address, then you can do that and then mark it as complete and move to the next section. All right, so now we're jumping into some fun stuff. So your academic background. So you're going to type in your institution. So for me, it was the University of Georgia, go Bulldogs. And then the country that it was in. And I think you may be able like to pre-populate it to use, like if you type in the country, it should automatically go to that. And then you can choose what language it was in, the degree, the subject matter. So for most MBA or for most degrees, like this is a fairly obvious thing, right? Like if you got a degree in engineering, you can put that there. If it was, I put English. So engineering. So you can always talk about what kind of degree it was. So if it was a master's plus a degree, you can always put that combination in and kind of fill out what kind of degree it was, and then beyond there. So I've got a bachelor's of science. Oops. So we'll complete that, and then our graduation date. Then from there, put the year that you graduated, and then you'll be able to move on to the next part. So are you currently enrolled in any particular university? So that would include like if you're doing any kind of certifications or anything like that, you can include it here. And actually the drop downs are actually showing, so you can see if you're part of a partner program. So the way that this works is the school has already designated specific partners where you can apply from one program to the other as part of a MBA partnership. And so there's specific schools that are there, so you would know if you are part of that. And if you are admitted to the HEC full-time MBA program, do you plan to apply to the dual degree? So you have the opportunity to choose, sorry, the pop-up wasn't staying, but you can choose if you want to partner with one of these universities to be able to do kind of like a dual degree or like a kind of like an exchange program like Erin is doing. Okay, so if you're applying to any other MBA programs, list them here. So, I mean, MBA programs are pretty smart, and they know that you're not only going to apply to one school when you're submitting MBA applications, because you're going to be applying to a handful of them because it's quite the process, and you want to be able to start potentially in fall of 24. So it's okay to list these here. What they're looking for is to know who their peer schools are. So this is a bit more of like a research process. You don't have to list every single school that you're applying to, but you can list most of them. And some of the easy ones that I would assume are going to be happening if you're applying to HEC Paris is most commonly going to be London Business School, INSEAD, Oxford, and now I can't spell on the computer. So you can list those here, and there's no problem with listing them. There is nothing will be counted against you or anything like that. And then again, like, please tell us the motivation for applying to the programs above. And you could say that you want to gain international business exposure in Europe, UK, right? It doesn't have to be super complicated or anything like that, but you can just, a simple explanation can be good there. If you feel like there's a specific reason that you want, like beyond like just studying abroad or being able to go into that specific market, then like, let's say that you really want to do fashion and luxury goods, then maybe you're putting, that you're also applying to Bocconi and you want to be in a fashion capital, right? So you might be applying to Bocconi and NYU because of the focus on fashion and luxury goods. So, all right. So next we'll move on to the admission. Oh, sorry. I skipped academic background. Or no, we already completed that. Oh no, here we go. Nope, I'm sorry. The next one is going to be the admissions information. Okay, so for them, they're going to ask you this upfront. Super exciting because you get to go ahead and select where you would want to interview if you get an interview. And so they do, and I'll see if I can get this to work. So you can choose different locations that are going to be most local to you, and you get 3 options. So, if you're in the US, where I am, I could choose, sorry, I could choose Boston, and then I could choose, I don't know, like if I'm traveling or if I'm willing to travel, I could go to other countries. So that's interesting because it only let me, it doesn't have, so this is interesting. So I know that you can't see the pop-up, but now all of a sudden, oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so that can list a couple of different choices from different countries that I'm most interested in applying to. And then from there, or applying and interviewing in. Then from there, I'm going to select the different languages that I can speak. So this is, something that I tell candidates, that it's a great opportunity to save space on your resume, and you don't have to put the different languages that you can speak because they're going to be in the actual application form, and the committee will see that when they're going through and reviewing your application. So you can choose, what level you are with these specific languages, and include that all on here so that the committee can see those different languages and give you kind of that kind of credit, so to say, of like knowing, hey, this person really does have a global perspective because they've learned, 3 or 4 additional languages. So next, they're going to ask you what type of test you've taken, whether that is going to be the TOEFL, IELTS, or PTE. So for your English exam, you'll be putting that in the drop down. And then for the GMAT or GRE, they're going to be asking you how many times you've taken this exam. And so a lot of people are like, do I need to answer this truthfully, Jen? Well, yes. And the reason is because all of the MBA programs have the ability to log into the GMAT and GRE system, and they get to check your record, and they can see how many times you've taken it. So from that point of view, I would definitely, be honest in that. And then from there, make sure that, because you never want somebody to go back and check up on you and then see that, maybe you weren't telling the truth, because that always starts to put doubt in the mind of the committee. So then again, the date that you took it, the verbal, quantitative, and different parts of your score and the breakdown. Same thing with the GRE. HEC Paris does not discriminate against GMAT and GRE. You can take both exams. And this is pretty similar for most MBA programs. They're really looking for whichever exam you do the best in so that they can, get the best score possible. And I see Shrey has a question about, should we include canceled GMAT scores as well? I don't think that you have to worry about that. I think only just how many times you've taken it. And if it was canceled, then I don't think you have to count it in the overall total, because that won't be shown. They'll just be able to see the different scores you have. So next, they want to go, again, a little bit of market information about how you found HEC Paris and learned about them. So then we move on to the next part of the application.
Jen, if I'm not mistaken, there's also maximum time to take the GMAT, right?
Yes. So I believe it's 7 times, and I don't know if that's going to change with the new setup of the GMAT Focus Edition. Do you know, Erin?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Do you know if that changes with the Focus Edition?
I think it's changing every year, right? Especially after COVID. Yeah, so I think, they should really follow the most updated one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got another question from Funmilayo. I use a different email for my second GRE. Will it still reflect that I wrote it twice?
Good question. So I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to what the portal looks like, as far as like using different email addresses or IDs. I'm assuming that if you have two different logins, that likely whichever one you share with the school is what they'll be able to figure out, as far as like you submitting your score to them. So to be honest, I'm not sure, but I would just be truthful. And it's okay. Like I get it. Like if you've taken it twice, one with both emails, it's okay. Like if you put two, but they can only physically see one, I think that's okay. But I'm happy to answer any of these more specific questions offline, or we can always do a little bit more deeper dive on GRE logins and such a little bit later. And I see that somebody was able to tell us that it's actually 8 attempts. So thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Mohammed has a question about CV, which is perfect because we're about to dive into personal experience. So sticking to one page rule, yes, I would definitely stick to one page because two reasons. One is that's what's expected at this level for a traditional full-time MBA. Second is if you have too much experience, they may feel like you're overqualified, especially if you're closer to that like 10-year mark. Like you're starting to get on the other side of the bell curve of the average years of work experience for the MBA program. They may think, they might be overqualified for this program and should be applying to actually the executive MBA versus the full-time MBA, and we might not have as much to offer. So I would stick to one page. If you're really having a hard time, again, I'm happy to answer some questions offline and talk about the resume and how you can condense it. Again, as we go through the actual application portal, you can see there's a lot of areas where you can be adding information like languages spoken, technical skills, and those types of things that you can put into the application portal and just use your resume to highlight what you've done and what you've accomplished. All right. All right. So I think that we're ready to dive into professional experience. So you can select if you are currently employed or if by chance you're unemployed. They do ask you to explain in essay number 6 why you might not be employed. And if you are unemployed, I don't want you to feel like that's a big deterrent as to, being admitted into the MBA program. MBA admissions committees are very open, but you need to tell them the story so that they understand more about you and your background and can actually understand where you're coming from versus making some assumptions that might not be as helpful in the application review process. So then it'll ask you about years of professional experience, and you'll be able to choose that. And then how many years were you in the managerial level? And so this is where typically they're going to be looking for direct reports. Sometimes you can include indirect reports as well. Like if you're a consultant and you don't technically guide an actual team, but you are, supervising multiple people, then you can put it here, and then they'll be able to see on your resume a little bit more context from there. So then from that point on, you're going to be putting in your company information, the country that they're in, website, the revenue of the company, which is really interesting, right? And so I think that not all MBA programs ask for this because sometimes you'll include the company description in your resume, which would include the annual revenue. So, it's interesting they ask it here, and that's another opportunity for you to shorten your how much you actually include on the resume and be able to kind of shorten, your entries if you need space and you're really kind of hurting for it. So job title, department, So here's where things get to be important as well is once you're admitted into an MBA program, almost every single school is going to ask you to fill out a background check. And this is where this third-party company is going to contact the employers that you put on your resume and say, hey, like, when did this person work for you, and what was their starting salary, what was their ending salary. So you want to be as close to this as possible. Let's say that like you're a couple $100 off, or maybe a month off. That's not as big of a deal. But like if you're months or thousands of dollars off, then that's where it starts to create a discrepancy, and the school is going to contact you and say, or well, actually it could be the background company, and they'll contact you and say, hey, like, we noticed a discrepancy. Can you write a short essay about what's going on here and why there's a discrepancy? Erin, I know that you've gone through this process. Do you have any insights to add to that?
Which
To the background check?
actually, I'm until today I'm not sure. Like, did they really do background check or not? But I did like prove like the all the information I put was true, so they can just contact like my reference or like my supervisor if they need. And then yeah, like provide detail, but only the detail that you want to say to them that makes the application looks better. Yeah, so I think that's my additional comment.
Got it. Okay. So then, again, like if your company is a subsidiary of something else, you can definitely include this. It's not required. And then you want to include your job description. So this is the difference between description and accomplishments. So, this is kind of, you can cut and paste from your resume here, or if you really feel like you want to go more in depth, you can use this section too. Making sure to pay attention to this maximum of 200 words. And then your career goals. So it's interesting because it really puts this into the application versus being like a separate essay itself and having to upload it. So you'll want to make sure that you take the time to think out, what you want to put as your immediate career goals post MBA, and where you want to work. Again, that's important to HEC Paris because obviously, like wanting to work in Europe, UK, like that will be an important factor in why HEC Paris is the right fit for you. And I would also say that you can look at the employment report to see what kind of companies and positions are typically hired from HEC Paris and where people typically are recruited to work post MBA, and just kind of do a quick gut check to make sure that those match. And if they don't match, then the committee is going to have to make a bit of a leap to make sure that it's a good fit for you, or you have to tell them the story of like why you need to go to HEC Paris versus somewhere in the US if you want to work in New York. So, all right. So from there, they'll be asking you if your company is going to be sponsoring you. Sorry. The screen jumped. So if your company is going to sponsor you, then they'll want to know a little bit more of like how much of their MBA program they're going to sponsor. And then the next question is, how do you plan to finance your MBA education? Yes, you're going to be considered for scholarships. And so you can put that as part of this process of, like, I'm expecting, I have savings or I plan to take out loans. I'm also hoping for scholarship to help cover these costs, out of pocket. So this is an opportunity for you to do that. If you don't necessarily have to say, I want scholarship for them to consider you for scholarship, but I think it's okay to include it there as well. All right. So,
Jen,
Mohammed,
I
I
have
think,
one question before
yeah.
about the managerial experience. If the years of managerial experience is zero, do you think that's a minus in one's application?
No, because that could be the exact reason that you want to get your MBA. And they understand that not everybody is going to have leadership experience or managerial experience coming into the MBA. And this is where you can actually use extracurriculars or something like that to also show your leadership skills. And if it's not directly management experience, you can talk about leadership experience or like leading projects, etc. So, make sure you're addressing that in your essays or in different questions to be able to show that you have led teams, but you might not have had a specific position that named it as, a title of manager.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. So, and Mohammed, I think we're about to get into what you were asking about with the extracurricular experience. So, on this tab, we're going to talk about your international and extra professional activities. So, when we look at, your international experience, they give you a good list, right? Like, so it can be, if you lived there as a child, um, if you went on holidays, exchange programs, professional assignments, etc., like you can include that in this actual process, or I'm sorry, in this part of the application. So, that's a really cool thing because not every school would think of it that way. And especially if you haven't been able to work internationally or with a global company, this is your opportunity to show, your interest and exposure to working across different cultures. And so that's what you really want to include here. And so I would use this opportunity to inform the committee of like, we every year we return to Paris to be able to, meet with family from across the globe, and we usually gather and like explore historical sites or something like that to show them your immersion into the actual country versus just visiting and going to the beach. Okay, so you can add plenty of different international experiences here. So, make sure that you do add, as I wouldn't say as many as you can, but a good variety if you have them. All right, so next we're going to talk about extracurricular activities. And so, again, this is an opportunity for you to be able to show much more of what you've been involved in, especially if you don't have as much room on your resume. This is the opportunity to really show that, as well as any leadership. So you might include the activity, the date, and if it's ongoing, that's great too, or if it's in the past, okay. One thing I would say is, unless it's something super significant and it like really plays into your actual application and story, I wouldn't go beyond before college. I would use, your college experience and up to present, because I mean, knowing that you won the spelling bee or you're part of a soccer team when you were 5 doesn't really help the committee see how that translates to your current activities, how you plan to, be part of the MBA community. And so that's what you want to share in the description. Why is this important to HEC Paris, right? Like, so HEC Paris and INSEAD, they do have like this big international, and I can't think of what the competition is. And Aaron, if you remember what it is, but it's like a big, like, it's like the MBA Olympics, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But like, if you are really excited about doing, any sort of sports and activities, and representing HEC Paris at this activity, like this is a great opportunity to share that with them. Man, I can't believe I can't remember.
MBA tournament.
Yes, the MBA tournament. Yeah, TBAT, TMBA, MBA.
Yeah, it's
Anyways.
a very big like sports event conducted by HEC students, and it's an event. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and it's for like with schools across the globe, and mostly in Europe, but it's a really cool activity to be a part of. And so, showing that you're part of like a kickball team or something like that could be a really cool part to add into this application and it be relevant to the committee itself. Again, this is also another opportunity for you to share that leadership experience. If you don't have managerial experience, you can actually include led a team of 8 to the swimming championship or whatever it might be. I think like robotics, building, there's a couple of different schools that like they do build race cars, solar projects, things like that. You can always include all those things here because they're interesting and they make you show up as you versus like the same thing as everybody else, and it makes you unique to the committee. Any question about ECs or extracurriculars, international experience?
Yes, I've got one question from S. How important is international experience for MBA programs?
Yeah, so you have to think of HEC's perspective, right, is that it's a very international program, and they want everybody who comes to be able to work across different cultures and teams and be successful there. And so any way that you can show that will be very helpful. So if you haven't traveled abroad, I would say try to find ways to incorporate working with teams from different backgrounds. And so, if you work for, an international company, working with the home office or clients in another country can be a great way to show this collaboration. Maybe you went to a school that had a pretty international profile, or any sort of like sports team or anything like that. And again, like, they are being pretty lenient and allowing you to include vacations. So, putting that all together, anything that you can do to show the committee that you have international exposure is definitely more helpful. HEC Paris isn't necessarily as discriminate as maybe like INSEAD if you don't have international experience, whereas INSEAD is definitely looking for some concrete examples of this global experience. LBS also looking for that. So HEC a little bit more open-minded to people who haven't been abroad, but you want to show as much as you can and your readiness to be part of this inclusive but yet very international program.
Mm-hmm. There's one more from Familayo about the background check. Do I need to input the email address of the person that I'd like them to contact during the verification process?
Ooh, good question. I would say, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to flip back to professional experience so that I can double check. They do not require this as part of the actual entry for that specific job. So whenever you get to the background check process, they will ask you for a contact phone number. They'll ask for a contact email or web address or something like that. So at that point in time, you can provide the contact information. I don't think you have to worry about it so much up front. The only thing I'm emphasizing is making sure that you're as accurate as possible. If you're off a couple of days or, a couple of $100, it's not as big of a deal. But in the grand scheme of things, like if you're saying you made thousands of extra dollars, then they want to know where the discrepancy is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we will move on to the essay section. So HEC Paris has quite a few essays. So this is a great opportunity for you to take each one of these questions and share a different part about who you are. I don't know for sure if GMAT Club is doing a deep dive into the essays for HEC Paris or not, but that's typically a whole different session. And so I won't dive into the actual essays and what you should be including here, just because we are probably getting a little bit short on time. But just understand that each one of these questions gives you another opportunity to show who you are and what you've accomplished in a different light. Whether that's sharing different jobs, different clubs, different activities, different experiences. You don't want to keep going back to the same project or the same, going back to the same characteristic about who you are. You want to show them a lot of breadth and depth. So, I think that this is pretty easy about, what is a professional objective that will guide your career here at HEC. Again, I would definitely look at the career report to help you with answering that question. What do you consider your most significant life achievement? That can be professional, personal. So, you have that opportunity, but make sure that it connects to the MBA experience. Leadership and ethics are inevitably intertwined in the business world. Describe a situation in which you have dealt with these issues and how they have influenced you. So, a lot of the times I have clients who are like, I don't know if I've necessarily faced an ethical issue yet. And so if you really need to, you can always, again, reach back to college. Like maybe you had a moment of like somebody asking to cheat, or maybe, I don't know. You can think of different scenarios where you're going to have to be ethical. Or, even again, on the personal side of, when were your ethics tested? And so, you'll have to kind of dig a little bit deeper to get there, but you can definitely find some sort of scenario, even if it isn't professional. Okay, so next is imagine a life entirely different from this one, and what would it be? So this is an opportunity for you to be creative. And I mean, like, the way I would answer this is, like, if you could do anything you wanted to do, what would it be, right? Like, if I could have my own business, or if I could have any career that I wanted, what would that look like? And so this is your opportunity to kind of share that here. I wouldn't be like, I would ask for world peace and butterflies and puppies, right? Like, they want it to be a little bit more realistic of, tying it to the job itself, or I'm sorry, the MBA itself. But this is definitely a great opportunity to be a little bit more creative and have some fun. Okay, so then they give you a multiple choice as to which one of these questions they want you to answer. Any of these are fine, whichever has the most draw for you of like, oh, I think I want to talk about a person, a place, or a book that I've experienced. Go for it. Anything that kind of speaks to you. And then the last question, is there anything else you want to share with us? So this is a good opportunity. It's kind of the optional essay where you can share anything about a work gap. Maybe there was, a moment where you had to change jobs, or like you had a lot of short stints at different places, or maybe your GPA or GMAT score aren't up to par with the average. And those are just averages. But, this is an opportunity to speak to the committee about something specific that you would rather give them the narrative and tell them the story versus them assuming what happened or what's going on. So use this opportunity, use this to speak to the committee. If there was something like a hiccup in your background, they don't necessarily want the whole story of like, this is the elaborate problem that I had. They more want to hear, I had this problem and this is how I faced it and overcome it, and this is how I've learned from this situation and moved forward. So, think of it in that way, not necessarily of like telling them a life story or a saga, but more of, being succinct and using, 4 to 5 sentences to explain the scenario and move on. All right. So next is scholarship applications. So obviously, like, anybody who's admitted to the MBA program is going to automatically be considered for scholarship. That's part of the process. Typically, they will assign that scholarship to you at time of admission or within like a week or two, so that you have the 3 weeks to a month to accept your offer for admission with the knowledge of what your scholarship would be. They do have some specific scholarships that you can ask to be considered for. And so this is your opportunity to name those specific things that you want to be part of or considered for. And then they'll also, share that like some of them will require a specific essay, like L'Oreal and Forte, specifically for HEC Paris. Any questions on that?
Nobody posted the question yet, so I believe not yet.
Okay, so then the next part is the declaration. This is simply stating everything that's in this application is as true as possible to my knowledge, and I verify that I completed the application myself, and you'll check the boxes from there. Then the next part is your letters of recommendation. So they're going to ask you for 2 different recommenders. They do require you, let's see if, okay, good, the pop-up showed up. So you'll want to be able to include their title, their first name, last name, company, position, address line. I don't know if you have to get like super specific, like this is their like actual mail stop, that kind of thing. You can put the general mail address, but they do want to make sure that you're putting their telephone number and you are using the actual email address from their work, because this is kind of one of their verification processes, that you're not using a Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo email address. You're actually using the company email. And this is part of, again, their verification that your recommender wrote their letter, even if it's not technically on letterhead, or if they uploaded just their text. This is a verification process for them. So on the flip side of that, I would make sure that you make sure that the recommender that you're using, that they know to expect this. They can check their spam just in case. If for some reason they don't receive it, which does happen, HEC Paris gives you an email address to make sure to send to if there's any complications. There are a few organizations like Deloitte and military where they don't allow outside emails, so you can always contact HEC Paris at this email address to talk to them about, hey, my recommender won't be able to receive this from outside. What do I need to do? And they'll guide you on the next steps for your recommender. Yeah, so I'm trying to think about if there's anything else. HEC Paris admissions team did do a presentation just before this of like walking through the application, like applying to HEC Paris. So I did hear her mention that they definitely are okay if it's not your immediate manager or supervisor right now. That's okay, right? So you can also include in the optional essay why you didn't use your current supervisor. But it should not be somebody from academics, right? Like unless you work in an academic setting, it shouldn't be a professor that supervised you on a project when you were an undergrad. It needs to be a professional letter of recommendation. So, again, if it can't be your current manager, then it needs to be a past employer, or two of them, or somebody who's worked with you, like if you worked on a nonprofit board for many years and has known you and can really speak to your leadership and your potential, then definitely they're going to be a good choice. All right. So next is the application fee. So this is where you're going to put in your information and be able to use that. Being able to put things, pay your 200 euros for the application fee. And then, so then you're going to pay the application fee. And from there, you should be able to upload any documents that need to be uploaded, resume, GMAT score. So this is just, again, like the unofficial score. You don't have to submit the official one until after you get admitted. TOEFL, passport, birth certificate, anything else that you need to upload, they all can be uploaded here, making sure that you are choosing making sure you're using the checklist to go through this process. All right, so we made it through the entire application. Does anybody have any questions?
All right, anybody have any questions? Maybe if they apply in last minute, like any tips for those kind of applicants, Jen?
If they're trying to submit their application very close to deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say if you feel like you're rushed, make sure that you have somebody review the application before you submit it, right? So I don't think that you're able to actually print out your application with HEC Paris, but I think that you should have, I would write my essays or any short answers in a Word document and share that with somebody else to review and make sure that they feel, confident in what you're writing, especially if you're doing it kind of last minute. The other thing is to make sure that your recommender is prepared because they also need to meet the deadline. Again, like the lucky part about HEC Paris is that they have monthly deadlines, and it's not as big of a deal. The difference between applying in like round 1, 2, or 3 for HEC Paris, like the difference might be round 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, right? So that would be, the advice is to submit the best possible application. It's not as big of a deal difference between round 1 and round 2 for HEC Paris specifically. So if you feel rushed and that it's not 100%, then maybe wait for the next deadline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great tip. Like definitely should do that. But
all right,
if it's not last minute, I believe, right?
Yeah. All right. So I think that's everything. If anybody comes up with any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them offline. You can always contact me at jennifert@aringo.com, or you can register on our website if you have any questions. And then beyond that, I think we're good to go.
Yep, I think everybody's like understand very well today, and maybe they will contact you if they have further questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and good luck with your applications.
Thank you so much, Jen, for joining us today. Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day, everyone.